Now, we've done a couple of stories about Bovaer. This is a chemical that a company called Arla, they're Britain's biggest dairy cooperative. They've got loads of farms all over the place. They've started feeding some of their cows in about 30 farms with this product called Bovaer, which is a chemical that stops cows from producing methane, burping, breaking wind. They do a lot of that. And methane is bad for the climate, bad for the environment. So, as I say, it looks like the blame for climate change has been switched from mankind to cowkind. It's cattle, apparently, who are doing it. So if we feed them this chemical, then, hey-ho, the world is saved. Well, first of all, I'm not sure that it's, well, I believe it may be quite preposterous to say that cows are destroying the planet. It's not their fault. Secondly, I don't think we should play with them. We shouldn't, as King Charles's farming advisor, a guy called Patrick Holden, said, they're trying to re-engineer cows. Leave them alone, and by extension, don't feed them chemicals because we don't want to eat them. And I'm not interested in the BBC from on high saying there's absolutely nothing to worry about, it's misinformation. Labour government says that we should feed all of our cows this. Now, I'm not sure of the veracity of this, but I understand once you feed cows this chemical, you have to keep them indoors. So it seems to me, what about them? They have a tough enough life anyway. You know, now we're going to feed them this. Leave them alone. Stop playing with nature, don't you think? Let me know what you think. 03444991000. Let's talk to social and political commentator James Melville. Evening, James.
Evening, Kevin.
What do you make of this? I mean, you know, it just strikes me they're playing with the very stuff of nature. And I don't like the idea of feeding chemicals to cows to stop them breaking wind and burping. I don't like the idea that somehow we hold cattle responsible for climate change. And I don't like the idea that by extension we ingest these chemicals too by drinking the milk and eating the meat. I'm not necessarily sort of put at ease by the BBC verified department saying all of your fears and concerns are based on misinformation. You know, sod off. I think we've got a right to be concerned about this, and sometimes they say, you know, with these kind of, particularly with climate change, follow the money. Who invested millions of dollars into the Bovaer company? It's old Bill Gates, wasn't it? So, you know, what are your feelings about Bovaer? I think stop it, don't you?
Yeah, I think there's a number of concerns. Firstly, by doing this, there's a lot of people concerned, a lot of consumers concerned, so ultimately that will be another risk for farmers. But the main issue is getting ahead of the debate. The methane myth. Now, you know, being a farmer's son, I was told this a long time ago, you know, there's a natural carbon cycle, which cows are part of that, and the pastures. Methane goes up into the air between 10 and 12 years, comes back down, dissipates, converts into carbon dioxide, goes back into the pastures and the grass and plants, and then organic compounds come off that. It turns into various elements. The cows eat the nutrients that's provided by that, and the cycle just keeps repeating. And the burp is part of that, but then it goes up in the air again, it comes back down again, the cycle continues. So that's the key debate here. There is a methane debate, and there's a bit of propaganda about this, that somehow cows are the problem. They're not. They're part of a natural carbon cycle. The emissions go up, but then they come back down, and they convert. That's the whole point of this. And the whole thing that we've got to in this debate, that somehow cows are part of the problem. Cows in the UK, considering, first of all, there's two components. Firstly, UK emissions, if you want to go down that route, is under 1%. And then cows are only a fraction of that as well. But then the cows have got the added element. They're part of the natural carbon cycle, including carbon capture in the soil. Now, the biggest problem isn't the UK. It certainly isn't methane from cows. If you want to have that discussion, point the finger anywhere, it's China. China, in terms of total emissions, more than the developed world put together. So if anyone wants to point the finger, let's look at China. Let's certainly not have this stupid crass logic where we're putting chemicals into our products, and understandably the public are concerned, but then the blowback will ultimately come towards the farmers, and it's not their fault. I'm really annoyed about this whole debate now because it's based on bogus science and a lot of propaganda, and yet another cycle of more pressure put on our farmers. You saw what was happening in London today and various other places around the country. Huge protests, tractor convoys, with a completely different issue on inheritance tax, which is also unfair. And also that debate, and going back to BBC Verified, they got some of their figures wrong there on that debate. Inheritance tax could affect up to 70,000 farmers, family farmers, and most of them are not multi-millionaires. They're struggling to make ends meet. So I think we need to lay off our farmers, actually. And if you want to have a debate about it, focus on China in terms of emissions.
Yeah, and Bovaer, a lot of rich people are going to make a lot of money out of it. I've got a great deal of time for the brilliant Times columnist Daniel Finkelstein. Lord Finkelstein works for the same company as me, but he wrote today, oh, you know, this nonsense conspiracy. It's been proved that Bovaer is perfectly, utterly safe. Do we know this? Do we really know this? The BBC telling us the same. You know, I don't want to be, you know, too conspiracy theory-ist about it, but it seems early days to tell us absolutely no comeback from this whatsoever. Really? Really? As I say, Patrick Holden, he is King Charles's farming advisor, he said, this has to be wrong. They are trying to re-engineer cows. Leave the poor things alone. Don't meddle with nature. So when we're assured that this is perfectly safe, I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. I don't believe it.
Completely, and there's no need for it as well, Kevin. That's the whole point. You know, firstly, the methane myth that needs to be debunked, and as you know, follow the science of the carbon cycles I pointed out. But then also, if you want to have the debate about emissions, you go elsewhere with China. And ultimately, what we should be doing is not muddying the waters at all. That puts ultimately more pressure on our farmers. They're getting so much pressure, and a lot of it is tied up with the net zero debate. This is another component. Another aspect you throw into that is obviously solar panels and prime farmland. That is absolutely ridiculous. They should put, if you want to do solar panels, put them on roofs, put them in car parks, put them down the side of motorways, brownfields, but don't put them on prime agricultural land. And I think farmers are sick and tired of getting tied in knots by various bogus, crass logic solutions, largely come from the government. In terms of the Bovaer debate, that was actually instigated by the Tory government. It was in October 2023, but then it's continued with this government. And back to the points that I mentioned before, there's absolutely no need for it.
Yeah, well, this government quietly last week issued this little statement. Went under the radar, but it shouldn't have. It was that the Labour government supports the feeding of this chemical to all British cows. Now, you're quite right, James. By extension, that will affect the farms because already quite a few people are saying, I'm not buying this, I'm not going to drink this milk, I'm not going to eat this meat. Therefore, the farmers suffer. They don't particularly want to give these cows the cattle, but it's a big company saying we need to experiment this. We've got the government's going to say pretty soon you all need to do it. People will boycott their products. They lose money. As you say, the farmers take it. They take it in the gut once again.
Yeah, completely. It's to do with the supply chains. You know, the farmers, a lot of them, it depends on the scale. You've got small independent farmers might sell locally, but a lot of farmers are tied up contractually to food supplies, you know, production, but also supermarkets as well. And that's another aspect to this as well. The supermarkets are paying farmers pittance to purchase their products. And yet on the other side of it, consumers are paying too much from supermarkets. And guess what? The supermarkets are getting record profits. But meanwhile, the farmers are getting squeezed. They're getting squeezed by the purchasing handcuffing of supermarkets. There's now this particular story. There's a solar panels issue and obviously inheritance tax. It is time for a fair deal for farmers. And a government, a good government, would put the interests of farmers right at the top of their agenda. But they're not. They're squeezing the farmers, and that is why the farmers are protesting, not just on inheritance tax, but on a number of different issues.
Yeah, they are. They're attacked from all sides, and they were out in force in central London again today. So they're not going to go quiet on this issue, and they've got your backing and my backing, James. And good to talk to you as always, mate.